Welcome to another edition of Sharing Your Passion. Today I am delighted to have with me the lovely Keidi Keating, who is an author, a visionary. She is the mainstay, you might say, behind a project called the Light Project. And this entails a wonderful book, includes a wonderful book called The Light, not yet published, but about to be coming out soon. Mm-hmm. And when I heard about this project from a friend, I thought, this sounds really wonderful, and I've got to find out more. And then having connected with Keidi, it seemed just natural that I should want to interview her. So I'm really pleased and delighted that you're able to join us. And today, thank you, Keidi. Keidi lives in Spain. She's actually not based in the UK, so this is a double thank you, really, to her for coming to not just to see us, but to have the interview here in London. We're also at the Light Centre, which is perfect. We're filming at the Light Centre in Belgravia, which of course is a perfect synchronicity, yes, for Keidi's book and her project. So, I mean, without further ado, Keidi, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this
joining
opportunity
me
as well.
And tell us about Keidi. I mean, for people who are watching this or listening that maybe not yet have heard of you, I'm sure they will, a lot more in future.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I'm a writer. I live in Spain, where I've lived for the last 8 years, and I lived previously in London for all of my life, apart from the last 8 years, where I was a corporate communications writer. So I wrote and edited magazines for big companies, such as Dixon's and PowerGen, and some government organisations as well. And so really since then, I then moved to Spain and set up a magazine aimed at the expat community living in Spain, and that was very successful. And I then franchised it to different regions of Spain, and that was also successful. But then I realised I didn't want to do that anymore. It was too much like hard work for me. So I decided to really stop doing that side of things and concentrate on my passion, which was writing. It still is writing, and helping other people to get their books published as well. So. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So I have written, a book before called Soul Searching. That's S-O-L searching, which is about my move to Spain and, a lot of the spiritual awakenings and things that happened along the way as well, and lessons that I learned from that move. Wow. And it's very different because it's more about a young person's account of moving to Spain, whereas a lot of the other books that are out already are more from an older person's, maybe right, retired perspective. So that's my first published book, and since doing that, I then realised that I have more books that I want to bring out, more books inside me to come. I did have a very happy childhood. I had a very kind of safe childhood in the respect of my parents were both very loving. My parents were quite strict in the sense of they were slightly overprotective of not just me but also my brothers and sisters. Right. But I now see that's a good thing. At the time I didn't, of course, because I wanted to go out to all the parties with my friends and get drunk, But then now that I look at it, they were very much, look, when you get to 18 you can do what you like. You can go out wherever you want, but we're responsible for you until you get to the age of 18. And so there were times where, there would be tension in the house because of that, especially having 3 older brothers and sisters. They wanted to go out before I did. And so there would be arguments and things like that. I mean, there are arguments in every household, I know that much. So that didn't really, I don't think that side of it affected me much. I just think I learned a lot from my childhood experience, like we all do. And I learned as I got older that actually I think it was for the best that I wasn't, allowed out much before the age of 18. There's certain things that happened since then. I just see it was for my growth, and I think I probably chose to come back to that particular family for that reason. for one of, you know,
Yes.
being one of the reasons.
Yes, yes.
But spiritual experiences and things as a child, I was aware always of energies around. That's what I see now. I mean, I never saw kind of like
Can you
ghosts.
give us an example of that?
Well, I just used to be very scared, like strangely scared about going upstairs on my own. And I mean, I know a lot of children are, but I was really, really scared, like petrified of going upstairs on my own. And I would, you know, this was even when I was like 7 or 8, and I used to have to get my mum to come upstairs with me. And
this is going to bed at night, is
this
it?
is even just going to the bathroom. Like, if I
okay.
needed, you know, to have a shower or something, I'd just say to my mum, "Look, can you come up with me?" And you know, sometimes she would just sort of like. Sometimes she would, and then as I got older, obviously, I then had to sort of start going upstairs on my own. But I used to go upstairs. I used to look in every single room, and you know, I did think. Now thinking about it, I'm sure that I was sensing something, you know, because that's almost a bit too strange. I think, you know, now I see, and also I used to see like colours and things in the night time, in the dark. I used to see kind of orbs, you know, like circles of different coloured lights and things. I never actually saw an angel, or I never actually saw a ghost or a spirit that I can recall, but I did see these orbs. So that, and I never really, I actually just thought at the time that everybody saw these things, and I'm sure that people do actually, but perhaps people forget about it, you know, as they get older. But I've always just remembered, because I've carried on seeing these things as I've got older. But I'm sure that a lot of people do see them when they're a child, but somehow they stop that. Or they make themselves stop that, I'm not sure.
Do you still see them now?
I do, yeah. I still see them, not on a daily basis, but regularly I see, you know, lights and things usually when I'm sleeping, and not when I'm asleep, but when I'm awake, but when I'm like going off to sleep, I see the things around,
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you see any, you said you didn't see any spirits as a child, but did you have any, like, how would I describe it, like examples or situations of maybe connections with, if you like, the non-physical world?
Well, I did used to...
apart from the orbs.
Yeah, apart from the orbs. I did used to sometimes, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I was completely paralysed, like my whole body physically was paralysed, and I used to have this ringing noise in my ears, like a really high-pitched like ringing noise, and it would get louder and louder, and I would be petrified. I was thought, you know, when it first happened, I thought, I'm dying here, you know, I'm going to die if this carries on, because that's what it kind of felt like. It felt like I was dying in some way. Anyway, I didn't realise ever what it was, never really talked about it, and then it started happening more as a teenager. It happened like an awful lot when I was a teenager, and there were various things that happened as a teenager where, you know, there was one evening, for example, where I was getting my teeth pulled out the next day. I had to have 9 teeth pulled out all at once.
Wow.
Yeah, because my mouth was like overcrowded, and then I had like 5 baby teeth and 4 adult teeth had to come out. And I was, you know, naturally scared, and they were putting me to sleep for this as well, because one of them was sort of like stuck up in the gum of my mouth somewhere. They had to, like, you know, operate and get it out. So I was really scared, and then so that night the burglar alarm went off in the middle of the night, and there's only one way that can happen really, and that's if somebody passed over where the chair. My parents used to put a chair in the doorway to the kitchen to sort of like remind us, if we did get up in the middle of the night, don't go in there. But somehow this burglar alarm was set off that night, and I'm sure now, again looking back, that I set it off, you know, not physically, but I just know that when I'm nervous about something, and, you know, same with anyone, there's a huge amount of energy that's released, you know, when you're that tense about something. And I remember that night I was finding it really difficult to sleep, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that the energy kind of came out and, you know, somehow set that off, because it was the only time that the burglar alarm ever set off on its own that I remember, you know. So
did you have any mentors as a child and as a teenager, apart maybe from your parents, and were there any teachers or anyone, or maybe it could be family or friends, anyone that sort of, you know, may have sort of set you on the path, as it were, wittingly or otherwise?
No, I can't really remember any, not any that really stand out. I would imagine there were some that I just, you know, haven't actually realised yet that they were mentors. But, you know, all my teachers at school, I didn't really, you know, get on with any of them. When I was in secondary school, I was a bit of a rebel, actually.
Really?
And used to get in a lot of trouble at school. Yeah, because I just didn't fit in, and I wanted to fit in. And so I used to kind of, play up a bit in class and be quite
Give us an example of that. Come on, let's hear about this playing up in class.
Well, I just used to... I had a friend, like my best friend actually, who I saw yesterday, we're still friends now.
Yeah.
And me and her together were just, it's not that we were... it's not that we were like bad in any like really kind of nasty way. We just used to have a lot of fun together.
Right.
And so when we were in class together, we used to talk a lot, and laugh a lot, and that used to disrupt, the class. But she was like my best friend, and but then we were in like a bigger group of friends, and so while she was an amazing friend, I didn't really fit in with this group at all, because all these kids were doing stuff that I wasn't allowed to do. Going out, they were drinking in advance of their years, stuff like that. And so this is why I'm saying now I can see why, I was protected at not being allowed to do these things, I think for the best. But so I did feel a little bit like I didn't fit in with this crowd, but I was in this crowd. So that's, And so at school, there's a couple of like silly things. Like once I walked past the headmistress's door and I just, like knocked down Ginger, which a lot of kids used to play.
Yeah.
I just like knocked on her door and ran away, thinking it was just a joke. I just wanted to have fun, and so I did that. And then she ended up suspending me from school for 3 days for doing that, which was quite harsh, really, considering it was just a sort of funny thing to do. She obviously took it to heart, and so no, I didn't really have, with the teachers at school, didn't have a very good relationship with them particularly.
Okay.
But my English teachers were always different. I always had a great connection with my English teachers because that was the one subject which I shone in. And, that's why I guess now I'm a writer.
Yeah, well I was going to ask you that, how your writing, started. If there is a starting point, or
when I was a child, so it's coming back to the fitting in, the fitting in theme. When I was very young, or my brothers and sisters, there was like a 4-year age gap between me and my brother, my next brother up. Between all of us, there was 6 years. So the 3 older ones were very close in. And I was the baby of the family. So they used to kind of play a lot together. And, sometimes I used to play with them. I'm not saying I never did, but sometimes I did again feel like I didn't fit with them. And so I would take myself up into my own world, I used to take myself, not into different worlds through writing. So I think my first ever little stories I wrote were when I was 4. And I've got them still.
You still got them?
I kept
Wonderful.
them. And they're like...
Do you remember what you wrote about then?
Yes, I used to write like about, Thomas goes on holiday. Thomas was one of my best friends at the time, the boy that lived around the corner from me. Right. And so it would be like Thomas goes on holiday, and then I would just write, very simple sentences like Thomas went to the beach, Thomas went in the sea, Thomas, everything was Thomas this, Thomas that.
Right.
And a lot about food. I always used to write what they were eating exactly. And, they would have like 3 meals a day, and I'd write every single one of them. Yeah. So, not amazing stories, but they were a starting point for when I was 4. And I used to illustrate them all as well. Little pictures on every page, as if it was a real book.
Wow. So were you born to be a writer, do you think?
Well, I think, I think I probably was put, in that situation for a reason. I can see it all more clearly now as I'm kind of becoming more aware of my path and my purpose here. Yeah. I see how it all fits together, and that, definitely I would have chosen that. Yeah. That situation to be. So
you went to school. Sorry to interrupt you. You went to school in England, in the UK.
Yes. Yeah.
And you did you go to college or university, or?
I went to journalism college.
Okay.
Yes, that was just 1 year.
Yeah. So you obtained then a journalistic qualification.
Yeah.
Right.
I did get that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then. You went to Spain, I think, when you were, how old were you, 24 or something, 23?
Yeah, 23, I think. I sometimes forget that, but I think I was 23, yeah.
So tell us how that came about, how you suddenly up sticks from the UK
Sticks, yeah.
and found yourself in Spain.
Yeah, well, again, this was to do with my parents, really, admittedly. They were looking for an investment opportunity because my dad had recently retired. And so they decided to buy somewhere, and they were just going to rent it out for an income opportunity. But then when they actually came to, to make that decision about renting it out, they decided that actually they wanted to live there. So they moved to Spain, and I think it took about 3 months for me to follow them.
Okay.
Because at that point I realised that I didn't particularly want to live in the UK myself. We'd often joked as a family about all of us moving to Spain.
Okay.
You know, this was like when we were very young, all of us.
So it
my
became
dad
self-fulfilling then?
Yeah, my dad used to joke about it all the time. He used to sort of like say, oh, one day we're all going to have a bar in Spain. You know, he used to use that as the thing. We're going to own a bar, and, you know, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that. And he always said he was going to be counting the money. You know.
Who says affirmations don't work, eh?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we don't own a bar, but
Right.
we do. You know, we are all of us now out there, apart from one of my brothers. You know, the rest of the family are all there as well.
So you arrived in Spain, and you were, presumably there was like an acclimatization period. You don't speak Spanish, I understand it.
Well, I didn't at that time.
You didn't at that time,
speak
certainly.
any. No.
And how did that sort of pan out to...
That was very difficult.
Yeah.
That was a really difficult time of my life. I mean, I had to move back in with my parents. You know, they only had a 2-bedroom apartment, so not a big place.
Right.
So I was in one bedroom, they were in the other bedroom. And, you know, that because I'd lived on my own at that point from the age of 19, so I'd lived on my own for 4 years.
Right.
I'd bought my own flat in, you know, Dartford.
Okay.
Not the nicest place in the world, but that's where it was. And so... so to go back, it felt like I was going backwards a bit, even though really I wasn't. I was actually moving on, you know, to a new country, a new life, which was going to come. But
Yeah.
at that point, I couldn't really see any of that, and I just sort of thought about it. It feels like I'm kind of moving backwards, and I didn't think I was going to be living with my parents for that long. I thought maybe I'll be there for, you know, a few months at the most, because my apartment was being built there, like a new build apartment, and it wasn't planned to be that much longer, a few months. But unfortunately, the Spanish builders do take their time with these things. You know, they have that mañana attitude, and that's true. I mean, they really do. So it was 9 months, and I often joke and say like it was a pregnancy, entire pregnancy.
Oh, really? Yes. Yes, it would be. Yes.
So yeah, that's what. Yeah. And so it was difficult because you know, I just was used to being on my own, and just stuff like even doing the washing. You know. I quite liked doing my own washing, and then suddenly, you know, my mum was like, oh, get your socks and get your dirty clothes and I'll put them on. And I just found that a bit just difficult, really. I mean, I know that she's, you know, from her point of view, she was just trying to help and not doing anything bad, but for me it was just 9 months which were, you know, and I didn't know really what I was doing throughout most of these 9 months. So at least 6 of those months I just felt very lost. You know, what am I here for? What am I going to do here in Spain? You know, I was offered a bar job, waitressing and serving up greasy breakfasts to people, and I just thought, I was offered that job and I just turned it down. I just said, I can't do that. I just can't. You know, I'm not very good at stuff like that. I would end up spilling everything over everyone, and, you know, and so, and this is when I realised I have to get a job doing something I like. You know, I have to carry on with writing in some shape or form. So I then, what happened then is there was a magazine, another expat magazine, already going, which had been going for a number of years, and they included a lot of feature-length articles in there. And when I moved over, it was it all flooded basically. The Spain flooded like really badly, and I wrote like an article about that for this magazine and sent it in and said, look, you know, I'd like to have a job on your magazine. So this is an example of my writing. Basically, that's all the email said. You know, this is. Anyway, about a month later, I was reading through the magazine, and they've used my article. It was just like in there, and I hadn't even said that they could use it. I just was saying that this is an example of the kind of thing I write, but they hadn't like got in contact with me or anything. They just decided to print it. And so I was a little bit kind of, oh, okay, you know, what's going on? So I rang up the office, asked to speak to the guy who owned the magazine. And I just said to him, you've used my story, so, you know, what's that all about? Does that mean I have a job here? And he said, oh, no, he said, we don't work like that. He said, you know, he said, but I do love your writing. And he said, I would like to offer you, you know, to write some more stories for us. We pay €30 an article. He said, including photos. So I thought, oh, okay, that's not exactly going to make me a living. You know, how many articles can you write in a month? So I just sort of thought, kind of, okay, I'm not going to do that. I then started writing some, it did give me the idea to then start writing some longer feature articles for some magazines based in England about Spain. So there was like Living in Spain and a couple of bigger magazines that I did, and I would get paid a decent amount for those ones. And so then, but then you see the biggest part came when my dad used to drink in this English bar. Where he used to go and watch football matches there because he didn't have Sky at home. Right. And one day he came home and he said that he'd met a man in the bar whose son was in hospital, and his son did an expat magazine called The Sentinel. And it was a very small, you know, A5 magazine, all black and white pages, and not very big, maybe like, I don't know, 30 pages long or something, but very funny. I mean, he was a comical man, so he wrote very kind of, you know, people liked his writing. Yeah. And so he said that, and then and that was kind of it. He just told me about it, and I was like, all right. He had leukemia, the man, and they'd just found out that he had this. So, and then about 2 weeks later, he went to the bar again to watch another football match, came back and said, well, I've just found out that that man who had leukemia has actually died. He's passed on. And he said, so I was quite shocked, you know, we all were, because I didn't know him, but I obviously knew the magazine. So suddenly he did all of it. He was the one who ran it. And so, and at this point, since being in Spain, about 6 months had passed, and I was very depressed at this point, not knowing, you know, what I was going to do, and I actually kept thinking I'd have to go back to England to get a job, like a proper job, I call it, you know, just doing what I wanted to do, which was writing, and like doing the same thing as what I'd done before I left. So, and then my dad said, like, oh, well, why don't you have a word with this guy's dad and see whether maybe you can carry on with it, the magazine, you know, maybe he wants. And I was like, oh no, Dad, don't be silly, you know, there's no way that he's going to say yes to that. I mean, I just thought it was impossible. but he carried on sort of, you know, saying about it, like just at different times, and then my mum would start saying about it, and then suddenly they'd start telling other people, and then they'd start saying that everybody around me was like saying, why don't you carry on, why don't you carry on? And then I just thought, okay. So I actually was a bit, I didn't have much self-confidence then either. So I just said to my dad, look, can you call him for me? Because I just felt really, because also my dad's quite, you know, is quite self-confident, or, you know, that's what I've always perceived anyway, that he has, you know. And so I said to him, well, look, you know, do you mind? And I hadn't met this guy either, whereas my dad had met him in the bar a few times. And he said, like, maybe you could just say something. And he did. He rang him up. And the conversation, I was overhearing it. It was such a short conversation. My dad just sort of said, look, you know, oh, my daughter's here and she's looking for something. She happens to be a writer. She's done magazines and, you know, it's up to you. But maybe if you want the magazine to continue, then Heidi could do it, you know. She could take it over. And the man was just so happy. The dad was really, really happy. Wow. He was just like, he was just like, thank you so much, and I've really wanted this. I wanted it to carry on. I didn't want his magazine to die with him. You know, I wanted it to. And he just kind of like, you know, gave us the business, just handed it over. I mean, there was no real income involved with it particularly. This guy did it as a hobby, so it wasn't at that point a lucrative business anyway. I mean, there was no way they would have been able to sell it as a business, because there actually wasn't a business either. I mean, they didn't even have access to his computer, so they couldn't even give me any old files or anything. I had to, you know, I was told I could carry it on, but I had to learn how to do everything from scratch. Nobody else knew anything. The only thing we did know was where he got it printed. That's the only thing we knew, and that was quite a key thing, because then obviously we could go to the printer. And at this point as well, like my dad, I didn't even have a car in Spain at this point, because I wasn't sure if I'd stay there. So my dad even, you know, came round with me to all the businesses. You know, so he helped me a lot with the whole thing. I wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for him. You know, he just helped the whole thing happen.
Tell us about Soul Searching, because that was your first published book, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
And that, as I understand, came as a result, I mean, this was partly based on your own diaries, is that right?
Yeah.
So
it was all based on the diaries.
It was all based on your diaries,
Yeah.
of living in Spain and acclimatizing to Spain, basically.
Yeah, because that's right. As soon as I moved out there, I started logging my thoughts and feelings.
Right.
And things that we did, things that happened.
There's some very good reviews on Amazon, by the way. I was reading fantastic reviews on Amazon, if you have a look at Keidi's book. I mean, you know, for a first book, it has
tremendous. Got some good reviews. Yeah, it has. I've never really done much in terms of marketing it, to be honest. But that's because as it started to, you know, as I carried on with this, I just sort of realised that, you know, that is a great first book, but then I just started having more plans for other books. And when you market a book, it does take up a considerable amount of your time.
Sure.
So I just thought, okay, that's a great book to have out there, but I don't really want to push it. Anybody that's meant to find it will find it. And it has happened that way. People have just found it on Amazon because it comes up in the searches. You know, if people are looking at moving to Spain, it comes up. So they're the kind of people that will buy it. It's people that are thinking of moving to Spain. Yeah,
and as you said, it's aimed at the younger market as well. So people in their sort of 20s, 30s.
Yeah, they're the kind that...
Those are the sort of people who would be interested in buying the book.
That's right, yeah.
I read somewhere, Keidi, I can't remember where now, but I read somewhere that you said that you had, if you like, there were some spiritual learnings in the book, in Soul Searching, whether in the content or actually writing the book. How did those come about, and can you give us an example?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was to do with the Centinela, and, well, I mean, it all started really from when I first moved to Spain and the time I went through there, not knowing my purpose and wanting to. Realised that it's very important for me and for everybody, I think, to want to know what they're here for. Yeah. And so that was like a point where I just was aware I needed to find that. And so it did really make me go very deep within myself, to really look at myself and what, you know, what my experiences had been up until this point and why I had had them, you know, just exploring. And at this point I wouldn't really have called myself particularly spiritual at that point, although I don't really like that word, because what is spiritual, but I just mean in the way people would perceive that as. I didn't at that point really, you know, I didn't read books about that kind of thing. I wasn't really that interested. It was just my own inner experience which led me down this path. And even the fact that the book was called Soul Searching, I mean, now I realise, you know, again, that's why. Even though I wasn't interested in that stuff particularly then. But then also the experience with the Centinela and some of the people I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I would really notice the energy difference between certain people. And people would offload their problems to me. They would see me as some kind of agony aunt. I used to go in places and I would just get talking to them naturally, like you do, like, oh, how are you? You know, have you had a good day? And they would just start telling me all this stuff about, you know, how their husband is being like this and this and this, and just problems, offloading them all. And I used to get home, I used to feel so heavy with everybody else's stuff. But there was nobody that I could really talk to, because I was the one that did the magazine. I mean, I wasn't going to go in there and start telling them my problems. I wouldn't have done that anyway, because that's just not the kind of person I am. But so I was listening to all these problems and taking them all in, and that was something else which really made me realise again about, well, these people are only, you know, getting what they're focusing on. You know, they're focusing on their problems all the time. No wonder they're always miserable. And a lot of the businesses were suffering at this time when I was going around. So they were always moaning about how they didn't have any customers. And I used to think, well, it's no wonder. I mean, you know, they were very negative people. And I'm thinking, well, if this is the way that you are with your customers, then I don't think you're going to get many in, you know. And that was the way, but it was more about the law of attraction aspect and the fact that, you know, you get what you focus on. Yeah. And so that was an awakening for me as well, because then I realised, well, it's the same for me, you know, I need to focus on what I want in the same way as these people are getting what they're focusing on.
Tell us about the, because I think there was a period you say, I think in the draft chapter that I've seen, Keidi's written her own chapter, by the way, in the book, and we'll come on to the other contributors, but I think you say something like there are about 3 years in your life when you felt sort of lost.
Yes.
And this was this
well,
at the time you were writing the book or after the book? But this somehow led to the light. Is that right?
Yes, it did. All of it. I mean, you know, because it's weird, really. So I went through this sort of, you know, down spell before the Sentinella, but then when the Sentinella came, it was something to put my energy into.
Right.
And although I didn't like doing it, it was a good point in my life, if you know what I mean. There were bits of it, like anything, which I didn't like. But I wouldn't say that that was a particularly bad point. I'd had that point until the Sentinella.
Yeah.
And then when the Sentinella came out, I did that. But then it's almost like there was another layer that had to come away, you know. And this was the point between doing the Sentinella. So I didn't have any idea what I was going to do with my sister coming over.
Yeah.
I just met a new man as well, funnily enough. It was almost like...
Right.
After when I made the decision to get my sister over, I think it was, and she said yes, I think it was the day after that I finally decided to meet this man who I'd just been speaking to on chat. I met him online, and we'd just been chatting online, and I finally decided, he asked me out again for about the 5th time, right. And I finally thought, oh, you know, why not? I'll go out with him. He invited me to a magic show in, you know, up in Malaga somewhere. So I just said, yes, all right, I'll go. And it was almost like, you know, you clear one thing out and it creates a vacuum for something else to fill it. So he took up a lot of my time, you know, once the Sentinella, because I just thought, right, I don't need to work right now. You know, I'd sort of like done quite well with the magazine, and I was still earning an income from it, even with my sister doing it. So I just thought, right, well, I'm just going to have a little bit of time off and enjoy being with this guy. And we went on a couple of holidays and things like that. But then obviously that sort of phase passes, and then you realise, well, actually we, you know, need to work as well at some point. So I started thinking about what I was going to do next.
Yeah.
Nothing was coming at all, like nothing. And I got into all kinds of things which I thought, oh, maybe I'll enjoy this. Maybe, you know, I traded on the stock exchange. I did, you know, I started buying places in other countries, thinking that was, I don't know, I was just trying to do something that would make me feel good, I guess. Like, you know, that's what we do, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I was looking for something. I was looking for the thing, which was me, you know, which was what I was all about. And I didn't find it, and I kept looking and looking, and it was just nowhere to be found. And so I then started, when I'd tried maybe 5 or 6 different things and didn't get anything from any of them, I just started feeling, again, really down, you know, like, am I here for any reason, or is this it, you know, is this it, is this all I have now, is this like, maybe I should have stuck with the Sentinella. But I did know deep down that, you know, that was the right decision to make, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But so, for about a year or two, you know, I say 3 years, but that was from the beginning, but a year or two of really heavy kind of feeling, just like desperation almost, wanting to find this thing. And I knew that I had something. I mean, I knew that there was something that I was supposed to be doing. That's why it was so intense, because I just knew, but I just couldn't work out what it was. And that was the problem. I was trying to work it out. I was trying to think, what is it that I'm here for? It doesn't work like that. I've since learned that it doesn't work like that, and we can't figure it out. It comes to us when it's ready. But when we're ready, and I wasn't at that point. So I just had to, you know, I just kept on going. Some days I would be really, you know, there came a time when I was crying a lot, you know, on my own in my apartment, and I felt very helpless, and I just, you know, didn't know where to go. But there was a pivotal moment that came. And it was just that I asked. I opened myself up and asked for the thing to come.
Tell us about that, because I think that comes across really well in your book.
Yeah, well, so I was, you know, in that place where I was crying a lot, and, you know, just not have any idea about what I was there for. And so I just then, I think the actual words I used were something like, you know, because I didn't really know who I was speaking to, so I just was speaking to everybody who I knew who was on the other side. So I started like saying, you know, granddad, because I've got a granddad I've never met,
right.
And also my granddad who I had met. So I had 2 granddads I could speak to. My nan, who I was very close to. I felt close to both my nan and granddad who I knew there, and so I spoke to them. I spoke to God, and I spoke to my angels and my guides. And so this was a time when I still wasn't particularly spiritual. I mean, I wouldn't really describe myself as that, but I was aware at this point of, I just couldn't get any lower. It was almost like there's no way that anything bad can happen from asking, so I might as well and see what happens. So I just did, and I said it all out loud, but it did come from my heart. It wasn't something, again, that I'd figured out. It was a very, you know, in the moment. It was like, it just happened. It just really did. You know, I was not thinking about that. I didn't plan this. It was just at that very low point that I just did it and just said it all out loud and completely from the heart, completely, you know, in that moment. So I did that, and then that was it. I just left it and carried on crying or whatever I was doing at the time. You know, I think I was very emotional at that point, and so just carried on. And then I think, you know, I started feeling a little bit better, but not much better, but just slightly. And then I was looking through, so I was still with my boyfriend at this point, and he was very supportive. I mean, sometimes he used to just sit there and listen to me rattle on for like 2 hours about not knowing why I was there, you know.
Right.
But he was very good like that, and would, you know, he's not a very spiritual person, but he would always understand that what I wanted and that I was looking for something more. And then what happened next is that I was looking through a magazine, and I suddenly saw this advert. It just jumped out at me, and it was for the Mind Body Spirit Festival in Marbella. A free, was it free? No, I think you had to pay like €5 or something to get in, but I sort of noticed it and thought, oh, that looks interesting. I feel like I need to go there, you know? And so, again, I knew my boyfriend wouldn't want to come because he was, you know, not into that kind of thing at all.
Yeah.
But I just said to him that I really just feel like I need to go here. And I wouldn't have gone on my own at that point because, you know, again, I wasn't feeling great and I didn't want to turn up for something like that on my own.
Right.
So I just said to him, will you come with me? And he said, yeah, of course I will, I'll come. And, you know, he said, I'm not really interested, but I'll come anyway. So he did, and we were walking around looking at all the stores and things, and we had, like, you know, an aura photograph done and, you know, various things. And, you know, he was telling me how, you know, he was trying to find explanations for everything, you know, like, oh, there's no way that's right. And some of the psychic things we were sitting in, he was like, oh, yeah, that's just all a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was very open to it, and so I kind of got it, you know. And then we walked past this store quite near the end of being there. We were about to go home, and walked past this store. I hadn't noticed it before, despite the fact we'd been there for a few hours. And it was called Mind, Body, Soul Healing. And it was all like nice browny colours. There was just something about the artwork that went with it as well that just captured my eye. Yeah. And I looked at it, and the name was on there as well, this guy's name, Richard Waterbourne, which again resonated with me, and I had no idea why at the time, you know. So I started looking at the leaflets. I was very focused on reading what it was. And then this guy pops up behind the counter thing, and he said, oh, hello, can I introduce myself, you know? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, oh, you know, I'm Richard Waterbourne, and, you know, and then he said to me, I feel like I've met you before. I feel like I've met you. He said, who are you? Like, what do you do? And so I started telling him about the Sentinella, thinking, oh, maybe he's been one of my clients in the past, and I haven't, you know, realised or something. But he actually lived in a completely different, like, area of Spain, and so that wasn't feasible because it just didn't make sense. You know, he would never have. And he said, no, I've never advertised in that. And so it was like, so really, I mean, I still don't really know why we had that, but it was a connection probably from a past life in some way, you know. Something did come up that he could have been my dad in a past life, whether or not that's true. It could have just, you could just be.
You actually got that sense?
Yes, I did, okay. yeah. A couple of times I did get that sense in the end. Not at that moment, but, you know, later on I did get that sense. So basically he then said to me, well, look, you know, maybe you'd be interested in coming for a healing session. And I was, you know, a bit like I was with you earlier, like, what's going to happen? And, you know, what exactly are we going to do? What exactly do you do? You know, I wanted to know everything, like, in depth. But he didn't really tell me much. And he was just saying, well, you know, you'll see, you just have to come. But I was still really sceptical, you know. I just was thinking, yeah, but I don't like doing things and I don't know what they are, you know. I need to know.
And so, you did it, and what happened after you did it? You know, that was the thing. You actually, as Susan Jeffers would say, you felt the fear and did it anyway. Yeah,
that's right. I did because I just knew. That's it. I think if it's so, like, strong in you that you need to do it. And I knew I did because I still was feeling very down and, you know, just knew I needed to do something. So I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe I've been led here after seeing that advert. And now I'm sort of drawn to this stall, this guy who I feel like I know but don't know, you know, like what's this all about? I have to do this. It was a few months, it took me a few months to actually email him and set up an appointment.
Okay.
It got to the end of the year by this point, and it was about...
Okay, so it didn't happen sort of...
No, it didn't happen
Didn't happen that quickly?
Oh, no, it didn't.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it was a few months. I think
Right.
it needed to sink in or something, you
Okay.
know. And I'd kept his, like, leaflet on the side of my, you know, desk. It hadn't moved, it hadn't budged
Right.
since I'd left it there.
Okay.
You know, I'd throw away all kinds of other things, but that one always stayed. So it was...
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd never just, you know, it was always like I kind of knew I have to do this at some point. So then it got to the end of the year, and it was a New Year thing, you know, when you're sort of thinking, oh, I can't possibly go through another year like this. So I did, I emailed him and booked an appointment. He was in Ireland at the time, so I had to sort of wait a bit, which was probably a good thing. I had to wait a couple of weeks till he was back. And then went to the appointment. Now, so the morning of the first appointment and the night before, I felt really ill. Like, it wasn't so much nerves, I don't think, although I probably was feeling a bit nervous, but it was just, I felt just so, I can't really explain it. I just felt really lightheaded, really kind of stomach problems, you know, like my stomach was like just gurgling
Like butterflies.
Yes,
yeah.
but I mean, I know that is nerves, but I feel that there was more to it than that. It's almost like the healing had started before I'd even got there. And I nearly didn't go, so I rang him up because he was giving me a few sessions for free to help me out. You know, I was sort of like not financially really well off at the time, and so I needed, you know, so he said, oh, you know, I'll give you a few sessions for free, and I think I gave him an advert on the Sentinel or something. And so he, so I rang him up and said, look, I don't feel very well, so do you mind if we cancel it today, because, you know, I'm obviously, you know, not meant to go or something. And he was like, oh, no, he said, that's fine. He said, no, most people do get these things before a session. He said, anyway, he said, I'm there now, you know, I've got there a bit early. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I better come then, you know.
Then you knew you had to go.
I knew I had to go. You know, my boyfriend was taking me there and everything and dropped me off. And this was like a 2-hour session, so I knew it was going to be a couple of hours. And I got in there, sat down in a chair, and the guys sat opposite, and there were like candles burning and stuff. I felt a little bit spooky, I don't know, a bit eerie or something.
Okay.
It was a bit weird for me, you know.
Yeah.
And it was very confrontational for me as well, to have this guy just sitting there, didn't know him, you know, I didn't know him in this lifetime at least, even though I did feel that connection. He was just sitting there, and I thought, uh-oh, what have I let myself in for here? Because I knew he was about to ask me deep stuff. But he didn't. He just asked me one question, and that question was, I still remember the question. He said, right, he goes, I'd like you to tell me about your childhood. And I just burst into tears. I've never done that before with anyone that I've spoken to, especially someone I don't know. I just like burst suddenly into tears, like really, really deep. And so, you know, he let me kind of calm down, and then he sort of went into things a bit more, and, you know, I had no idea why I started bursting out crying like that, but in hindsight I think it was just because of the way I was feeling, and actually any question would probably have made me cry, because I knew he was there to help me, and that was, you know, something quite alien to me, that somebody was prepared to help me and sitting right there with, you know what I mean, like so kind of, you know, like as well, I've kind of always grown up in my, you know, just bottling things up a lot and not being a very open family in that sense, you know, kind of quite closed.
Yeah.
People, you know, keep everything in to themselves. So that's why I was like that. And so I just was relieved, I think, to let all this emotion out. And so he'd set up this healing, especially to do that. You know, amazing energy, this guy. And, you know, obviously called in the angels and the guides to help. And it worked. So he then led me through, asked me some more questions, and there was deeper stuff as well that came up, which I won't go into here. Yeah. But he kind of, you know, was asking me deeper stuff about things, and my body started shaking violently, like really shaking. And so I then laid down on the table thing there, and he then led me through the deeper healing, which is all about breathing and releasing stuff through the breath, which we did. And, well, I'll get now to after the session, because that's where it gets more sort of interesting. I mean, during the session, there were amazing things happening. Like, I was feeling, like, pressure on my chest and things, but nobody was touching me. And there were all sorts of sensations I was feeling all the time. Like, my body's convulsing throughout the whole 2 hours. releasing, you know.
Yeah.
And so so I got home. So my boyfriend took me back to his house because he lived closer, and I was really tired, like really exhausted. It was only like 11 a.m. at this point, but I was exhausted. So I just said, like, I'm going to sleep for a bit. And I slept for about 3 hours or something at that time of day. And as I woke up, somebody said my name in my ear, like really loud. They said like Keidi, like that, which kind of woke me up. But you know, it was definitely a voice, and I'd never heard.
And there was no one else in the room physically. No. Well,
this is what, because I was looking around thinking, like, my boyfriend's in here, but he wasn't. He was like downstairs at the point, you know. So there was nobody else in the room, and so that was really strange, you know. And I didn't really know what to think about it, but I had heard of people what that had happened to, and it had been their angel or their guide that had done that to try and wake them up to something, or to try and get their attention at that moment. So that happened, and then that evening, so I then went home, and that evening I went to bed early again because I was still very exhausted, and I woke up, probably, I'm not sure the time, it probably was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I woke up and I was sort of like in the in-between zone, you know, when you're halfway between being asleep and awake, and this happens a lot to me, like in this place. I was awake because I remember I was sitting up on my bed. I mean, I wasn't lying down at this point. Whether or not I'd left my body, I don't know. Can't really remember, but I do know that I was sitting up in bed because there was a big ball of light was right in my bedroom doorway. Like a really amazing ball of light, really radiant, sort of like golden colour.
What sort of size?
Golden,
like a
quite
beach ball
big.
or something?
No, bigger than that.
Bigger.
It was more like an oval shape. It was more like the whole body would be without the legs, really. You know, so that shape, like an oval, really shining out, lots of rays coming out of it. I've never seen anything like that before, and I haven't seen anything like that since. But the other thing that was weird about it is, so it was quite hazy around the edges, this ball of light, and also his voice was very, so I say his voice, but there was like he was trying to tell me something, and I knew it was a he, even though there was no, you know, I couldn't really.
It felt like a male
It was
energy.
a male, it was definitely a male, and he was trying to talk to me, but his voice was very muffled, you know, like when you're tuning into a radio station and you don't quite tune in properly and it's between the frequencies. Well, that's exactly what it was like. And that's also why I was probably seeing the ball of light like I saw it. I wasn't adequately tuned in. I was sort of halfway between the two. And so I couldn't hear what he was telling me. I could only know that he was saying something. And I couldn't get to that point of tuning in. And I wasn't even aware of any of this at the point of the tuning in thing. It came after. But I wasn't scared either, which is very unusual. I think thinking about it, I would have been, but I wasn't at all. And I just felt very much at peace, and I knew that this spirit was here to help me. But then he sort of like slowly started backing out. He was backing away through my bedroom door, then kind of just vanished down the hall. You know, I couldn't see all the way round, but he obviously just went. He kind of backed off. You know, I don't know what he obviously realised that maybe he thought I'd heard what he wanted to say, and I don't know who that was.
Yeah.
I have no idea whether it was a guide, whether it was one of my deceased relatives, or whether it was just a random spirit which had popped up. You know, could have been anyone. It could have been anyone. But this was just the beginning, and then since having this first healing session, more and more things like that started to happen. Like, you know, there's so many that I could go on all day. But, you know, lots of things. But those two,
would it be fair to say that those two then incidences, the sort of waterborne, if you like, healing, and the light in the doorway, those were were they the sort of like burning bush moments that led you to the light, or was there still more? You say there was more.
Well, it was a series of things, really. I carried on having the healing sessions. It was quite a while after these incidences that the idea for the book came to me.
Tell us about how the idea for the book came.
Yeah, so I carried on having the sessions. I might have had another 5 or 6 before, well, it was actually quite a boring way, in some senses, that the idea came to me. I mean, I was just literally just eating dinner, on my own. I often eat dinner on my own. You know, I live alone. And I didn't have the telly on or anything. I was just eating. You know, I was completely switched off, I guess, in that sense, from any kind of real mental activity or something. And suddenly, it's almost like it just landed in my head, like this string of words landed. They just, as if they'd been put there, and they just read something. They just read something like, "You need to, the people that have helped you, you need to put them all in a book." That was all really I had. Because, you know, I haven't actually gone into all this with you because it's a long story, but there were other people now who had cropped up that were helping me as well, in other ways. You know, there was a number
sort
of people.
Writers.
Some of them were writers. Some of them were just books that I'd come across, that, you know, come into my awareness that I needed to order. Some of them were actual people. You know, there's one lady, Molly Ann Fairley, who did psychic workshops. You know, lives here in England, but actually travels to Spain a lot to do psychic workshops as well.
Right.
So I attended a couple of her workshops, and she really helped release some stuff energetically as well. Some stuff that has happened in past lives to me. You know, like beheaded and stuff. There are things that have happened which aren't very pleasant, which we tend to hold in our energy unless they're released, especially traumatic moments like that.
Yes.
So she helped me release them, and other things as well, and other people. So there was a lot going on, and so this was all I had, this one sentence,
right.
But I just knew this was like my purpose. This is why that had all happened. I then realised everything. I guess that was what you'd call your burning bush moment.
Yeah.
That it was that point. It was just something very simple. You know, I was expecting, you know, like some amazing revelation would happen, but I was just eating dinner. So again, it's a lesson. I mean,
it can happen at any
it
time.
Can happen
right?
at any time. I mean, it's just something so boring as eating dinner. You know, like really not that interesting.
Yeah.
But it was the best dinner I think I've ever eaten because it was just like suddenly it was like this energy unleashed inside of me. And it was like, right, that's what you have to do. This is it. But I still didn't know much. I mean, that's all I had. That one sentence.
Yeah.
That's all I had. I think I wrote it out even and stuck it on the wall, you know, just so I could focus on it.
Wow, brilliant.
But then all these other people started coming into my life as well. Like, so other people started helping me. And so slowly I got together a list of people who, you know, I wanted to contribute chapters, and you know, not all of them said yes, some of them did, some of them didn't, but this list sort of like started like moulding and growing and changing, and you know, sometimes one or two would drop off and a few more would pop on the, you know, the list. So that, anyway, eventually now, which was I think 2 years later, I now have practically all of the 22 contributors, because it then, you know, started realising, okay, it's going to be 22, it's a master number, which is double cooperation in the spiritual realm. You know, that's like something now I realise there's definitely 22.
That's my birth number as
Is
well.
it?
Yeah,
oh wow.
22, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a great number to have as a birth number. But also I see that a lot now. Like whenever I look at the time, like a lot of the times I'll look and it's 2222 or something 22,
wow.
And also the 11 crops up a lot as well.
Yeah, both master numbers.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always when I always see these times when I'm focusing on the light, when I'm doing something very, you know, it might be that I've just come out of a 2-hour conversation with someone, Julie Chimes, actually, who's very closely working with me on this book now, which I'll get to. I guess we'll get to her in a
shortly,
bit. But yeah, so sometimes like we might be talking about something and or to do with the light very intensely for a couple of hours, and then I'll like look at the time or something, 22 or you know, whatever, 22 and 2:22. It's always like something like that comes up. We have a lot of signs together, you know, Julie and I, while we're working together. Yeah.
And in fact, I think that also comes out in your book. You do say, don't you, in your chapter about, you know, there are various signs you realise, as it were, along the way. I mean, this is so typical, as my own experience as well, you know, of going through this sort of, or going on, whichever way you'd like to express it, this sort of spiritual journey. And then when you reach a point like now, it's almost... then you think, what happened 2-3 years ago? It was all part of, you know, the bigger puzzle. All the pieces were fitting into place, you know, without us obviously necessarily realising at the time. But just for people who you know, maybe not be entirely clear about the purpose of the book and what it's really about.
Yeah.
I mean, am I right in thinking that, you know, the purpose is, you know, to if you like, express reality in terms of a light, that we are light, that we all shine, if you like, in a sense, from the light, and that there is light within all of us, that if we share, now that light may be unique to different individuals, but you know, you've got 22, you say, contributors to the book, so 22 different chapters. Have they all written on the same sort of theme, or how has it worked?
Well, they have really. I mean, they've all written, the theme of light runs throughout all the 22 chapters.
Right.
But some of the things we talk about, like there's 3 different sections of the book, and I think, so the first section is practices. Sorry, no, the first section is preparation. So the idea is that for us to find that light within and work with that light within, you know, we do need to prepare ourselves. I think at one point in the book we mentioned, like, it's almost like if you put electricity through, you know, you can't suddenly put a load of electricity through something, you have to work up the grid, you know.
Okay.
And it's almost like the same with us humans. You can't suddenly just, you know, expect that you know, work with this light. When you have to prepare yourself physically and mentally. And so there's the first chapters are all things to help people prepare themselves. And
so to prepare to get into this sort of, if you like, this consciousness or awareness of, you know, this spirit within, if you like, that can help us.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, you explain it really well. And then the second section is practices, and so the practices are, for example, things like meditation, you know, things that we can actually do on a day-to-day basis, or not necessarily daily, but, you know, we can do these things.
To oil the wheel,
oil the wheel, exactly, or the cogs. And so all those things then lead to the experience. And the subtle energies, we've called it, subtle energy experiences, which are the things like seeing angels, seeing spirits, hearing from angels and spirits, a bit like I did. I mean, these things won't happen all the time on a daily basis, or they might do if you do open very psychically. They can well happen every day, but even when they happen now and again, it's still amazing to know that you're on that path. And not only that, but when you start having those experiences, you're able to open up to the bigger picture, and you get to know more about who you are and your purpose, and you're able to shine that light then over everything you do in the same way. You've
hit upon something there, and I must say this on camera, Keidi. I think it's absolutely wonderful that you've obviously been on this journey. You're very, if I may say so, you're still very young, you're 31 years of age, you know, and you've gone through, if you like, the dark night of the soul, some might say.
Yeah, a couple.
And you're getting to, a few maybe, certainly if you're like me, but, you know, and you've got to this place where you've, you know, hit upon something which is obviously going to be not just of personal value, but it's going to be sort of value to potentially so many people who can, you know, empathise, I think, with your own background as well, which I think is fantastic. You know, you come from a, dare I say, a fairly, I'll say ordinary, that's the wrong word, but a fairly normal, if you like, background. And you are where you are with the book. I think it's fantastic. But tell me something, one question that I really wanted to ask you is, how do you, what about the sort of the man on the street who's working sort of 9 to 5 to pay the mortgage, to look after his family and children, you know, and perhaps isn't very spiritual, quote unquote, doesn't think about these things. What sort of value might the book have to someone like him, do you think?
Well, I think that it will awaken him to his own, well, his light. That's what it is for everyone. It doesn't matter where the person is on the social, you know, status like equation. It doesn't really matter, because we're all the same. And actually, that man is probably meant to be having that experience. But if he's able to find the book, then great. I mean, I just have this thing that anybody who's meant to find the book will find it. The book will find them.
They'll be drawn to it.
Or the book will find them somehow, you know. That's the way that it will be. And maybe that man you're talking about isn't meant to find the light right now. In that case, he won't. But if he does, then the value that he will get from it is that it will awaken his own light, and he will hopefully then use that in his life to alter his experience, you know, release some of that stuff which is keeping him where he is. Yeah. Because that's what it's all about, you know. If he's able to release that karma, because that's a completely different subject really, but when it comes to, you know, we all do have this karma as well that we're here for, but if we're able to release that, opens up this, you know, new energy which can come in, and that's the light. Yeah. Now you've got, sorry to interrupt you again slightly, but I mean, you've got 22, haven't you? Is it contributors? 22 contributors, you said. Now, there must be, I mean, I've had the privilege, if you like, Heidi's given me a sneak preview of some of the chapters, although it's still in draft. Yeah. But 22, I mean, some household names is there as well. We can talk about one or two of those in a minute. And maybe you can give us examples. But can you share with us, to really give people a sort of flavour of the book, you know, maybe a story that really sort of stands out for you, that someone has shared, one of the contributors, it may even be yourself, but, you know, a story that sort of is really a bit like chicken soup for the soul, you know, a really heartwarming story that brings out the real essence of the book. Is there one? Well, there's various. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't know which one to pick right now, but I guess the best one for the sake of this interview would be the story of Julie Chimes, who's, you know, like I've mentioned, is working very closely on this book with me. Right. And I mean, this you know, this transformational experience happened 20 years ago, so it's not a recent thing, but it was... This is to her, right? To her, yeah, so a major thing that happened in her life. But then this is a very good story to illustrate. Basically, she was stabbed almost to death by a paranoid schizophrenic who she had allowed into her home. And you know, her partner at the time was a local doctor, and this was one of his patients. But sometimes they used their house as a kind of waiting area for the patients. I don't think anybody knew quite how bad she was in terms of being a paranoid schizophrenic, you know, but she was taking medication. Nobody knew at the time that she'd stopped taking that medication at this time. So, you know, Julie was being very, you know, hospitable, friendly, allowed this lady to wait inside the cottage, went upstairs to turn the electric blanket on for her, so she had a warm bed. She was shivering at the time. You know, she'd been through a funny incident on the train where she'd taken all her clothes off or something. Wow. But, you know, obviously mentally ill. So, and so as she was upstairs, she heard the cutlery drawer open, and she thought that this lady was just making herself a cuppa, because she'd said, you know, help yourself to tea or whatever you like. So she thought she was just getting a spoon or whatever. But then when she went downstairs, she said she always kind of would jump the last 3 steps, just the way she, you know, we all do that, don't we? I think, like, you know, just jump down, bound down the stairs, so much energy. And so she kind of did that, but then landed on a knife that the lady was holding up at the bottom. She'd actually taken her largest, her largest chopping knife, and had held it up, and so Julie fell onto it. So it wasn't an accident. She was actually trying to deliberately stab her. Yes, she was trying to stab her, but it's just because she'd held it up like this, like knowing that she was coming at any moment. But Julie kind of fell, but then she obviously went like that as well to stab her. So it kind of went right straight into her chest, and you know, obviously the pain would have been unbearable, of course. But at this point, you know, so I'm not sure how many times, you know, she was stabbed at this point, but I know it carried on for a considerable amount of time. But Julie then was able to leave her body, well, I don't think wasn't that she was able to. I think it just spontaneously kind of happened that she left her body, and was able to view this drama going on from some other place. And you know, at this point she was aware of a place of complete loving. It was only loving which she felt. And so when she went back into her body, because she was kind of in and out, at the point when she was back in her body, she suddenly screamed to this lady, "I love you." And, you know, this kind of shocked the lady. And at this point she would have been able to take the knife and, you know, stab her back, but obviously she didn't want to do that, so she didn't, but she could have done. But she was in a position then where she was able to somehow make a move which eventually led her to being able to escape from the house. And I mean, it's an amazing story, and I mean, Julie's written a book about this called A Stranger in Paradise, which, you know, is just I can't, really amazing book. I mean, it really is. You can be laughing and crying at the same time.
Right.
I mean, really, the energy that's gone into every single word.
Yeah.
It blew me away when I read it. I just felt like I was Julie,
Yeah.
I felt like we were one, which is what we all are anyway. So
Right.
that's why that comes across so powerfully, because she'd been able to experience that.
Yeah, I think it also, does it not also come across, I mean, again, it's when because I actually read this chapter in Keidi's book, and I think what really came across was her amazing, if you like, ability, or in the moment, to almost stand back and to be totally compassionate,
yes,
to be totally loving, let's say, and to be forgiving. I think she says
in the moment.
she talked about going through a forgiveness process afterwards as well, I think.
Yeah.
But
yes, she was able to forgive at the time.
I remember writing a little note in the margin. What a great example of unconditional love.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is the light, in the form of, again, forgiveness creates like a whole kind of, Julie describes it as like, if you don't forgive, it's like carrying around a hefty sack of potatoes.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a brilliant
Write everyone's
metaphor.
name on the potato.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually it will just turn into a rotting bag of slime that you're carrying around with you, which is stinking and all sorts of things. And why would anybody choose that?
Yeah.
And if you do that, that's like a huge barrier to the light, stopping the light from being able to shine through. So it's about releasing these obstacles, these kind of layers of yuckiness that we have over us, of forgiveness is like a key thing when it comes to. So that's why the forgiveness chapter, for me, is a really amazing chapter. For me, in the book, I think that's one of the key chapters. But they're all key chapters actually. But that one is a great example.
One of the sort of raison d'etres for, or if there's a plural of that, I can't remember, but one of the raison d'etres of sharing your passion is to hear from, the interviewee, from you, about the love and the joy that this project, if you like, has brought you and is bringing you.
Yeah.
So can you share that with us, because we'd really like to know. I think I'd like to hear from your heart what it really meant to you, because you feel you get a real sense of your enthusiasm. Yeah,
I mean, I just feel so privileged every day when I wake up to have this, which I know isn't coming from me. I know it's coming from a higher place. All of it's coming from a higher place, and I'm kind of just the channel. And I just, every morning I wake up, I just feel so amazed at what's ahead of me in the day and the people that have come into my life. Even like this interview now, it's just, it's I would never have even thought about doing something like this a few years ago when I was in that depressed state. And what I really just would love to just share this gift, this book, to as many people as I possibly can, and that's what my passion is. And I know it's not just mine, but everybody who's in the book feels the same. I don't really like to see the book as being like my book. I know I'm kind of like, I'm the vehicle putting it together, but really it's all of us as one.
You're like the facilitator in a sense,
exactly. And we all are one. We all are one energy, and I really just want the more that the light spread, the more people are going to awaken to this sense of oneness, and the more the world can live together and work together in harmony and unity. And that's really the larger scale key and the goal to all this.
That's the bigger picture. Beautiful.
That's the bigger picture, but obviously there is the charitable aspect as well, which
Can we just come back to that in a minute? Because I'd like you, because people are thinking, well, who are these contributors? You've mentioned one or two, and I think it is important for you to share with people here in the interview, so that they know who's coming, if you like, who's going to come on stage at some point. So just give us a selection of the people that you've
maybe all of them
that you've managed to choose or persuade or whichever way.
Okay, well we have Marcy Shimoff. I don't know how to pronounce
Yes, I wasn't sure about that either.
Marcy Shimoff is one of the featured teachers in The Secret, which was a huge, success DVD in the book. And so she talks about happiness in the book, which one of her books, one of her best-selling books, is all about happiness.
Happy for no reason. Yes,
that's the one. So she writes on there, and then we have Janet Atwood, who is the author of, or co-author of the Passion Test book. Now gives seminars worldwide about that. We have Barbara Marx Hubbard, who is
evolutionary consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, she's
fantastic.
one of the newcomers.
I didn't know that.
So
you surprised me there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's you know, that's a great one to have in there. You know, quite elderly now. She's in her 80s, I believe.
She's fabulous.
Very fabulous woman. Yeah,
Fabulous
yeah.
woman, yeah.
It's a great energy to have in the book. We have Terry Tillman, who I believe you know.
I know Terry well, yes.
A lot of people know Terry.
He was the first sharing your passion.
Yeah, so Terry, well, I've told you a bit about that earlier, but yeah, Terry's been a key in this whole book as well, you know.
Right.
It's almost like there's three, I see, kind of keystones in the book. One of them, you know, is me putting it together. One of them is Julie, who's, you know, just really helping, like kind of helping me navigate this whole thing, and she has a lot of marketing experience. And then Terry, he's just works magic and has this amazing, like, connector ability, so it puts me in touch with all kinds of people all the time. So he is a worldwide speaker. He's travelled in 94 countries, I think it is, and you know, has a wealth of wisdom, as you know.
Yes, indeed.
And so he writes all about the true self and getting in touch with the true self.
Yeah.
And then we have, how many more would you like?
Well, I was thinking maybe you can give us a little flavour as well, because I mean you've mentioned, I think, a few of the quite well-known American ones, but you've got others, haven't you, from Europe and the UK as well?
We
so
have.
Do you want to give those a little mention?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, for example, we have Molly Ann Fairley. Molly Ann Fairley is a psychic, opened suddenly at the age of 40, and she's writing all about connecting with your angels. Which is an amazing chapter. I love that one. And then we have a man called Mark Bajerski. Mark Bajerski, you know, is another, you know, intuitive man, and so he shares his gifts. You know, healing with the elements.
He's based in Spain with you, right?
He's based in Spain. Yeah, I met him again, you know, kind of by chance, and. So, you know, he's again somebody who's really kind of helped with the whole project. He's a great friend as well, so he often just will, you know, get on Skype with me, kind of guiding me, you know, in the right direction. So
you really have brought together all these people who have, if you like, been part of your spiritual development, your spiritual growth, as if I know spiritual is maybe not quite the right word, but do you know what I'm saying? It's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's
right. They're all
it's almost like you get all your heroes and you get them all to write a chapter in your book. You know?
Yeah, that's it. And so the book just radiates now this amazing energy, you know, which is why now it's called The Light.
Yeah. Wonderful. So tell us about the charitable aspect. So and how people can, you know, maybe get involved in that.
Okay, so at one point when I was, you know, putting the book together, then kind of hit me that this book has to be 100% for charity. I just realised it was a selfless service thing. You know, I didn't want there to be...
like a gift of giving.
A gift of giving, exactly. This was something where all these people who'd helped me were doing it from their hearts, and so I wanted to give back to the world something, but also, of course, everybody who's in the book is doing the same still. They're continuing their givingness and, you know, their heart work. So then, you know, I kind of looked at it and decided to sort of split the proceeds between the 8 charities. So it is 100% for charity. That's 100% net.
So the 100% of the proceeds, the net proceeds go to charity.
Yeah, and a lot of people are funny about that word net. You know, it's not saying we're going to kind of like say,
we're keeping... to cover your expenses, basically.
Just the expenses. We're not going to sort of like go and stay in lavish hotel rooms and fly on, you know, first class jets everywhere and stuff. You know, what we're hoping to do now...
That's a shame, I was hoping to come.
Yeah. What we're hoping to do now, looking at it, is that we would like actually for all the 100% of the book sales to go directly to the charities. And I'm not saying this is going to happen yet, but this is what I would like to happen.
Do you want to name some of the charities as well, so people know, you know, who you're supporting?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll name a few of them. We have the Alderhay Imagine Appeal, which is you know, a bit like Great Ormond Street, but that's up in sort of Liverpool area, you know, up there. Alderhay Imagine Appeal. And we have, there's the, part of the proceeds are going actually direct to our charity, which is the Light Worldwide, because we're planning to do a lot of things in the future.
And this is to fund more books and more education, is it?
Yes, exactly, and we have, as well, I'm trying to think of all the names because I've got so
Is
kind
that,
of...
one of them is the Forgiveness Trust,
Oh, of course,
or the Forgiveness
yes.
Project
Yeah,
or
you
something?
know better than me.
Make-A-Wish Foundation. I know that because I used to give to Make-A-Wish.
I'm not sure about Make-A-Wish yet, actually.
Oh,
we're
right.
kind of we're liaising with them at the moment. But
Okay.
yeah, the Forgiveness Project, which is one that Julie had recommended because she's a big part of that.
Right.
So most of the charities as well have come through the contributors, you know, like ones that they've worked closely with, or somebody's recommended one, and we've kind of looked into it and thought, oh yeah, you know, that's a great one.
Yeah. So that's another nice alignment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And we've got some smaller charities as well that we're working with. You know, like, I mean, a lot of them wouldn't be known, but they're all going to be mentioned in the book and on the website. So the smaller charities, you know, I could name them now, but like Manicare is one of them. And,
Right.
But nobody, I don't think, would really know them just yet.
Yeah.
But we're going to put all that information.
But the point is, all the proceeds, the net proceeds, are going to charity
exactly.
and going to support other good causes, basically.
Yeah, we didn't want to do all of them to massive charities because, of course, it's the smaller ones as well that need help.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the financial.
So how
help.
can people contribute to this apart from buying the book? Which perhaps you can tell us what the status of the book is now, because it's not yet published, is
No,
it?
it's not yet published. We're hoping it's going to come out in September,
Right.
but that's not definite. I mean, you know, but it will be in 2012, so it will be September, October, November, that period. It will definitely come out, and obviously I'd, you know, update that on the Facebook page we have, which is, you know...
Which people can join.
Which people can join.
Right.
It's just
And
Facebook.
what's the Facebook page
The
called?
Facebook page is called the Spread the Light
Spread the
Campaign.
Light, okay.
Yeah, so it's just facebook.com/Spread the Light Campaign.
Right.
And so we update all the news on there regularly.
Is there a website as well?
We are getting the website done right now, and
Okay.
that should be ready within a month.
And what's that called for people when...
That's called, we've got the lightnetwork.com,
Okay.
and then from that you can then navigate to all the different areas of it, because we
Right.
have one section for the book, one section for the charity, you know, different sections.
Okay.
And there's also another domain name called spreadthelightcampaign.com.
Okay.
So that's I'm to think about it because there's so
Lot
many
to remember
names.
there, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry.
So that the Spread the Light campaign, when you said about how people can help, people could help by the Spread the Light campaign is so that people can come and actually help to spread the light, spread the message of the book. So, for example, they could put something on their Facebook page about it. They could maybe send an email to some of their friends about it. There's lots of different ways we're going to suggest that people could help.
So it's not just buying the book, it's actually,
no, that's right.
Here is the book, and it's encouraging others to buy as well.
This is all about working in unity and, you know, so helping. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So not only that, but we're also setting up like a fundraising thing where, you know, we're going to have different levels of entry where people can also donate money if they would like to the project.
Okay.
The money would go directly to various things, which would be very clear about on the website. You know, some of them will just go directly to the charity, but the goal is to raise $1 million for those charities. So we don't really, I mean, obviously in an ideal world we want to get there by selling the book, because we want to get that message out to as many people as possible. But of course, if we also get donations coming in other forms, then that will help to get to that goal quicker.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Wow.
It's turning into a whole project.
Huge. Good
It's not
luck
really
with
just
that.
a book
Wow.
anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's absolutely fantastic. Keidi, is there one message, one snippet, one thing that maybe is in the book or maybe it's in your heart now that you could share with people watching this interview as being like, you know, something they can take away until the book comes out or they can see it for themselves?
Well, I mean, for me, I've always seen, when I've been going along this path from the beginning, I would just see white butterflies everywhere. Oh. So I would say to people, look out for the white butterflies, and the white butterflies mean something. When you see a white butterfly, just see what you get in your heart from that, you know. And it might not be a white butterfly. Everybody has a different totem, a different sign. Yeah. Just look out for the signs and see if the signs lead you where they lead you. You know, if they lead you towards the light, if they lead you towards your own purpose, then follow those signs. Beautiful. Because that's what I did.
Beautiful.
And I like where it's led me. So
yeah, wonderful.
Remember the white butterflies.
Remember the white butterflies. There you go. Keidi Keating, thank you so much. It's been amazing, beautiful. You're so fluent. I love your enthusiasm. You know, it's been great. Really, thank you very much for coming on and being interviewed. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
and
as
wish
well.
you so much luck with this book. You know, whatever happens, I'm sure it's going to be a huge success.
Hopefully.
You know, and I really, you know, it's such a great message as well. So,
Well, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So, there ends another Sharing Your Passion. Thank you very much for watching, and catch me next time for the next one, okay?